I want to sort of begin, Mr. President, with governance and leadership. And so many of the folks here have never visited Ghana. In fact, probably many people have never visited Africa. So maybe to begin, could you just tell us a little bit about your country?
Ghana, it was the first country to have gained independence from colonialism, from Britain in particular, in 1957. It also has produced so many people, some of whom are serving in even more developed countries around the world. Unfortunately, many of them are not serving in Ghana. They are rather serving out. Mm-hmm. And this is why the talk of brain drain is so germane. So it's that type of country. The people are not given to extremes. They tend to be reasonable. They are rather welcoming. That's the nature of the people. Intelligent, hardworking, and open to welcoming visitors. So if you are looking at Ghana, that's a major attribute. Then I believe it's strategically positioned in West Africa. It connects well with the neighbors. To the north is Burkina Faso. To the west, Cote d'Ivoire. To the east, Togo, Benin. Ghana sits in there, but relating very well with all of them. It's got history. When you come along our coast, which stretches for about 500 kilometers, you'd count some slaving castles, some dating back 500 years ago, first built by the Portuguese. These forts were built initially to trade in gold, because it was the Portuguese that gave the name Gold Coast.
Right.
To us. But in due course, the trading degenerated into slaving, humans, who got transported across the Atlantic. Mm-hmm. But into modern times, it's a place that we pride ourselves in describing as the gateway to Africa, because it's a lot of politics there. That's where Kwame Nkrumah started the call for Pan-Africanism. Mm-hmm. That helped liberate most of Southern Africa. We've got some good universities. Currently, we count about 30 universities.
You're very modest in your accomplishments. You've been an exemplary leader in Africa and really globally. You served during the first decade of this century from 2001 to 2009, is that correct?
Yes.
And your country, during your 2 terms, really advanced a lot in terms of economic development, and you set a very, very high bar for country governance when the 57 or 58 countries on the African continent are ranked in order of governance and in terms of corruption indexes. You always ranked so highly. Was that the country that you were inheriting as you assumed your leadership, or were you one of the leaders really effecting all of these positive changes?
Well, I shouldn't take credit for the goodness of the country. But in all modesty, I would say that my government contributed greatly in making a difference. Because at the point we took over, the economy was rather in shambles. There was high inflation, over 40%. The exchange rate with the dollar was so bad. I think in the year 2000, our currency depreciated by, I would say, over 100% against the dollar. You needed 10,000 of our currency, 10,000 units to get $1. Lending rates in the banks hovered around 55%. So you couldn't do any business with that sort of thing. But when my government came in, we announced through our manifesto that we were going to usher in a golden age of business, because we believed in the private sector, we believed in the market, even though with a conscience, though. And that's what we try to do. We quickly tackled the macroeconomy, disciplined it, cut back on government borrowing to create space for the private sector. We took the highly indebted Poor Countries Initiative with the IMF. And within 2 years, the international community declared us as having reached the completion point, putting us back in the black to access credit. And within 4 or 5 years, the currency that used to exchange with the dollar 1 to 10,000 came at par with the dollar 1 to 1. Yes. And we didn't have to use any high-handed measures against the people. Mm-hmm. We respected the constitutional rights of the people, democratic rights, allowed the market to operate. And that really gave us such a high image internationally to attract investors. And the export crop, one crop that had sustained the economy for the previous 100 years, cocoa, because of government policy, regained confidence. And so the produce that used to be around 350,000 tons a year in 2001, by 2004 jumped to over 700,000 tons, meaning it more than doubled. All these things came together to change the economy. So by 2007, Ghana had been rated as having attained the first Millennium Development Goal of the United Nations on the continent, cutting down hunger and poverty by half. And it all happened within the 8 years. In fact, by 2007, Ghana was ranked middle income internationally by the international assessors. So this is what we did. But as I said, the goodness is there on the land.
So I'm glad you've explained all of that because I realize just how transformative the decade was under your leadership. Where is Africa today in the year 2015 from a governance point of view, from a modernization point of view, and how hopeful, how optimistic can we be? Is this an inflection point in your mind? Are there other leaders across the continent who can effect change the way you were able to?
I should think that Africa is a big continent, 55 countries. Mm-hmm. If you are including North Africa, then there are countries like Morocco, which are doing well. And I'm very much impressed with what I see in Morocco, for example. Stability, economic development. Down south of Sahara, there are other countries that are also doing quite well. Côte d'Ivoire, after its war, is quickly getting back together. But I believe the turning point occurred at the beginning of the century, when what used to be called the Organization of African Unity, the continental efforts at unifying, was converted to the African Union. That really prescribed the market, respect for the market system, prescribed constitutionality as way of governing, prescribed freedom of the individual, respect for human rights. And then also offered partnerships, because it admitted that Africa had been lagging far behind the international movement into globalization. And the Union said for Africa to catch up, Africa needed the partnership globally of the developed world, so Africa could leapfrog, the term leapfrog was used, into the mainstream of globalization. But by that, it was talking of a partnership of mutual respect and of win-win psychology. And if Africa could go that way, then Africa would stand shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the world.
Right.
So this really has been the trend of development on the continent since the beginning of the century. Till then, the continent was hallmarked by so-called strongmen, men or governors that ruled or governed without accountability and transparency. Everywhere Africa was dubbed as corrupt. But since the beginning of the century, more and more governments are coming into office through the ballot box. Even though the system perhaps is not perfected yet, we are in the right direction. So I believe there's great hope for Africa.
So you formed early in your first term a very important commission that looked a lot like the commission that was created in South Africa, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Mm-hmm. Why had you formed that Truth Commission? What were you trying to achieve? And then what was the outcome? What was the impact of that?
Ghana, at the point I assumed office as president, had been independent for about 40-something years. And of those years, the military had taken power by force through coup d'etat for more than 22, 23 years. Some people had been tied to the stake and shot without being tried. Some properties had been confiscated. There was a lot of pent-up feeling, very tense feeling against the wrongdoing that had been perpetrated against the people earlier. And I and my government feared that unless we had a safety valve to the pent-up feeling, we might not get the peace necessary for us to govern positively within the 4-year term. It's only a 4-year term. The government immediately preceding mine had at its head a soldier who had presided over affairs of the country for 19 long years. They say leopards can't change their spots even when they fall into water. So the feelings were there, and we thought we should go the South African way, set up a commission of truth and reconciliation, allow the victims to come out and speak, vent their pent-up feelings. And then where you can pacify them, you pacify, so you have a peace of mind to govern. In fact, former heads of state, 3 of them, though military, had all been shot at the stake and been buried in unmarked graves. When we set the commission up, we were able to allow their families to go and exhume them, to give them decent burials. And people whose properties had been confiscated, we gave the properties back to them. And with that, there was peace.
Is that right? So the commission concluded successfully. It was a cathartic.
I believe so.
Brilliant. Well, just a remarkable 2 terms as president of your country, and I think really inspiring, and also just the most hopeful signal that others can follow your lead, can follow your example. So congratulations on setting a very, very high standard, a very high bar. And for that, we are incredibly grateful to you. Thank you for coming.